Chapter 9. General Lowe again sat with his associates. On the wall being projected were a series of images, and they were not things that pleased the group. It was the Sub-Zero program, and it was nearing completion. "General Lowe, have you any good news for us?" Croesus said. "My friends, you have nothing to worry about," he replied with supreme confidence. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room, and it fell to Croesus to silence them. "Care to enlighten us, General?" he said. Stefano grinned and rose slowly to his feet. He stepped around behind his chair and leaned on the back of it. "We just had a new election, gentlemen, or have you forgotten?" Yes, we all know about the Americans' presidential elections," Croesus said sharply. "What about it?" "I happen to be in with the staff of the incoming administration, and as I've been padding the accounts for the project, it now appears to be way over budget. All of that, plus the information on Daniel's embezzlement, will ensure that the program is cancelled." "You're sure of this?" Croesus said. "Positive," the general replied. "Trust me, come the new year, Daniel is in for a very rude awakening." "How is it we know nothing of this?" Mr. Red said, his tone making it clear that he didn't believe the general. "You've all been focusing on the wrong end of the dog, shall we say?" the general said. "General, enough with your colourful language," Blue said. "You have all spent the last 2 years looking for ways to discredit Daniel. Your Mr. Smith and his involvement in Daniel's family, what did that get us?" the general asked. "If you didn't care about that, why was one of your men following him?" Croesus said. Stefano smiled. "Ah, well played. Yes. Okay, I had him tailed. The reason I'm a success is that I make it my business to know what's going on. But not just a little bit of what's going on. I watch everything." "And what is that you watch that we didn't?" Croesus said. "I watched that old axiom of follow the money," Stefano said. "The money?" "The money," Red said. Stefano laughed. "Yes, I imagine for you gentlemen money is no object." "Money is not important," Red snapped. "Spoken like someone who has money," Stefano replied. "Yes, the general makes a good point," Croesus said. "There was a time when my ancestors were simply shepherds. They had no money. Then came the oil rigs, and the money flowed in as rapidly as the oil rushed out." Stefano gave him a little nod. "Thank you, sir, for understanding. Here in America, and in particular Washington, it's always about the bottom line. Now I've seen it to that the Sub-Zero program is not only way over budget, but the test reports are very discouraging. You see, for Washington, going over budget isn't enough. Hell, everything we do is over budget." Another murmur echoed through the conference room. This one was a general mutter of approval. Daniel had enjoyed his life since the time of moving out on his own. Granted, Gabby still pestered him about patching things up with Pop, but she was doing so less and less as time passed. He'd also found teaching wonderful, and his friends very supportive. Olga was especially nice to talk to. It was due to her efforts that Daniel went to David and Kimberly's wedding with Kelly. To be honest, he wasn't sure what to expect at a witness's wedding. Did they have any special rituals? As it turned out, it was pretty similar to a regular one, although the minister did go on and on a bit much about how David was to be the head of the family. Yeah, they could be a bit old-fashioned about such things. This was also where Daniel got to meet Kelly's parents, Ralph and Penny, and her brothers. Caleb was a bit much to take. He spouted religion and real estate as if they were the same thing. Now Nick, on the other hand, he was a great guy to hang out with. Daniel actually enjoyed talking to Ralph and Penny much more so than Kelly did. Now when the parents started in on the whole end of times talk, Daniel and Kelly listened very carefully. In the time since then, they'd stayed close and worked on their weather show, but that had been it. Daniel thought about trying to get closer to Kelly, but his attempts never worked out. It seemed she was so focused on work that a personal life wasn't possible. Now here it was, the start of a new year and a new presidential administration. Daniel sat in his apartment, the same studio apartment he'd been in for nearly 2 years. In his hand he held the letter from the National Science Board. He had to wonder, why were they calling a special session again? He checked his watch. Yeah, it was time to get off to that meeting. He hoped Kelly would be there and the general would not. Why that man had to be so unpleasant, Daniel would never understand. Oh well, once Sub-Zero was up and running, Daniel would have no need to be around him anymore. He stepped outside. Yeah, a very cool and clear day. Daniel smiled. His good old veggie car was still running perfectly. Hopping into it, he drove down US 41 to the county admin building. It was interesting how little the area had changed. Yeah, Port Charlotte didn't grow very much or very fast. He passed the Chili's. It was still in business, but Gabby was long gone. Daniel had to smile. John had been right about Gabby. She had talent. Granted, she wasn't on Broadway, yet she was a featured player up at Disney World. Pulling into the parking lot, he recognized both the General's limo and Kelly's car. He frowned. What about the others? Not sure he didn't know of all their cars, but there should be more here. Daniel chewed his lip and felt a small cramp in the pit of his stomach. This did not bode well. He tried to put some worries out of his mind. No sense worrying about anything until there was just cause, so he headed into the conference room and saw that General Lowe and Kelly were, in fact, there. "Hey there, you two. How's it going?" he said. The General, sour as ever, just grunted and pointed at a chair. "Sit down, Daniel. We'll make this quick so I can get out of here." Daniel looked around. "What about the rest of the committee?" "Not here," Kelly said. "The General was just telling me that they're not needed." "Huh? Why not?" The General slapped his briefcase on the table, opened it, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Because this is not a meeting, merely a notification," he snapped. Daniel leaned forward a bit and scanned the paper. His jaw dropped, and Kelly snatched up the sheet. "What the?" Daniel started to say. "Cancelled?" Kelly shouted. "What is going on?" "Sub-Zero has been shelved due to budget cutbacks," Stefano said. "Cutbacks?" Kelly said, her brow very wrinkled. "Oh, come on, General, you can do better than that. Washington is famous for spending more than it takes in. What's really going on here?" "Well, Kelly, he's right," Daniel said. "It is an expensive project." "Oh, Daniel, the subs are all done. Why would they cut the money now when we're within sight of the finish line?" she said. "Well, there were other issues," Lowe said. "Ah, here we go. Politics, right?" Kelly asked. "Well, the Navy learned about Daniel's inappropriate use of personal funds." Kelly slammed her fist on the table. "That's a dirty lie." Stefano pulled a stack of papers and pictures out of his briefcase. "Here's the proof. Daniel used his father's money to perfect his system and then used government funds to reimburse him." Daniel rose to his feet. "Now, that's not a fair criticism. When I was allocated those funds, I was told I could use them to cover my research and expenses as I saw fit. Well, paying back my pop fell under that umbrella, General." "Hey, it's not my doing," Stefano replied. "I'm just here as a courtesy to tell you it's over. The subs are going back into service and you're out, Daniel." "So all my work for nothing? Did they rip out all the equipment?" Daniel asked. The General shook his head. "No need. As you so aptly put it, the Sub-Zero gear has no effect on the ships." Daniel sighed. "Well, I suppose that's something. Maybe someday, if attitudes change, they'll reinstate the program." "There you go, Daniel," the General replied. "Always try to look on the bright side. Well, I shall bid you two a goodbye and be off." Stefano gathered everything back up into his case, and off he went. Kelly, looking totally dumbstruck, sat down on the table. "I smell a rat," she growled. "Kelly, you're not going to say this is some sort of government conspiracy, are you? Come on, I hear enough about that from Fabio and Ronald with their obsession about JFK. Kelly's brow wrinkled. "What, Daniel, you honestly think this is just about government funds?" "Well, come on, what else could it be?" "Oh, you truly are a complete innocent, aren't you?" Daniel frowned. "Kelly, don't patronize me. So, okay, I'm not as worldly as you, but I know the score. Then open your eyes and see what's going on," she said. "I am, but Kelly, why on earth would anyone torpedo my program for anything other than budget reasons? I mean, think about it. This is a system to stop hurricanes. We're not talking about a new missile system or a dam that's going to kill some fish or a new drug that might be dangerous or be cheaper than another one. Who in the world would be opposed to this?" "Are you familiar with the term Lucky 13? She said. Daniel slowly shook his head. "Nope." "Let me enlighten you. They're an organization of mainly international oil producers." "Like OPEC?" Kelly nodded. "Partially, yes, but they're separate from them. They also have huge construction companies as members, and they make massive amounts of money from hurricanes." "How do they do that?" Several reasons. First off, every storm that damages our offshore oil rigs means more of their oil they get to sell." "I thought you were opposed to that kind of oil rig," Daniel said. "Yes, but I understand the need for them. Also, when US production goes down, the price of oil spikes, and these people make even more money." I see. Finally, there's the rebuilding." "Oh, so that's where the construction comes in, right?" Kelly nodded. "You got it. Remember, after Katrina and the other big storms of the past, billions went into help and construction and a lot just vanished. Every major storm that hits the continental United States means billions for the Lucky 13. And you think they killed my program?" "It makes sense." Daniel chewed his lip. "Yeah, I suppose it does. But, Kelly, where's the proof?" Now that I don't have." "In that case, it's a nice theory, but nothing more. Until you've got some actual proof, I'm not going to accept it," Daniel replied. "Okay, Daniel, your choice," Kelly said. As for me, I'm going to keep digging into this and warning people about the potential storms to come. Ah, now that I will continue to help you with. You want to go grab a bite and talk about it? Kelly shook her head. Sorry, I've got a meeting back at the office with my supervisor. We're going over the computer models for the upcoming hurricane season. Oh, okay, next time. Over at the quad, Daniel stood off to one side and watched the impromptu show that was going on. Tony was entertaining the masses, and even Roscoe sat there and watched. Daniel had to laugh. Tony was still in college. Was the man ever going to graduate? Daniel! A familiar voice called out. He turned and smiled. Yeah, there was Gabby. Goodness, that girl just got more beautiful every time he saw her. His smile turned upside down. If he was noticing that, then so were other men. Daniel was learning to hate men. He had to wonder, would he be like this with any daughter he might have one day? Hey, kiddo, how you doing? Daniel asked. Good, just buzzed into town to see Pop, she replied. Daniel grimaced. Oh boy, he knew what was coming. That's nice. So what about the show? How are the rehearsals? Daniel, don't change the subject. Huh? Gabby, what was I changing it from? Pop, our father, remember him? Only too well, Daniel said slowly. So what about him? I had lunch with him. He's not doing so well, Daniel. When are you going to go see him again? Oh, I don't know. How about never? Daniel snapped. I see no reason to talk to him. How about email? Daniel laughed. And he would read it? How? Gabriella nodded. Good point. What about Phil and Pat? Have they been to see him? His birthday's next week. Any sign they're going to make an appearance? Gabby's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Daniel slowly nodded. Yeah, that silence speaks volumes. They don't care about Pop, so why should I? Because you're you and not them, she said softly. You have a conscience. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck and turned slowly around in a circle. Gabby, in the last year and a half, I've tried half a dozen times to reconcile with him. Every time I extend a hand to him, he turns his back on me. He does not. I'm speaking metaphorically. Oh, Gabby said slowly. Yeah, I guess he does that. Well, then why do you want me to try again? Daniel said. What, 7th time's the charm? Gabby sighed, a heavy, sad sigh. Daniel, if you could see him, he's pitiful, sad, depressed. Gabby, I know all this, but a relationship is a two-way street. I'm willing to meet him halfway, but I can't make the whole journey for him. He has to do his part. Can you get him to do that now? Nope, she said, her tone betraying just how sad she was. Then there's nothing for us to talk about, Daniel said. Will you send him a card on his birthday at least? Gabriella said. He gave her a small smile. Of course, I never forget his birthday, you know me. Now enough about depressing stuff. Come on, how are things at the Sarasota Players? The change in subject instantly perked her up. Gabby smiled. Oh, it's good. I'm playing Nancy and Oliver. Looks like it's going to be a great show. Oh, that show, huh? Not your typical happy-go-lucky musical. Gabby shrugged. Well, the director is one of those people who doesn't like fluff. Daniel's brow wrinkled. He doesn't like what? Fluff on his shows? He means he wants musicals that have strong stories, Gabby said. You know how many of them? They're such nonsense. No real story at all. I see what you mean. Okay then, yes, that's another powerful show. Well, you can just bet I'll be there opening night. With Kelly? Daniel chewed his lip. Well, maybe. Gabby's brow wrinkled. I thought you guys were doing so well. We are. It's just we're not serious. Is that how you both feel, or just Kelly? Gabriella said. Well, it's the way things are. But you were doing so well. What changed? Daniel started to give Gabriella a rundown of the cancellation of the Sub-Zero project. Long before he was done, they were ringed in by Olga, Tony, Fabio, and Ronald. They all agreed with Kelly's opinion. Something was not right. Yeah, there's something smelling bad in Holland, Olga said. The others laughed, and she gave him a blank look. No, Mama Olga, Daniel said. It's there's something rotten in Denmark. But you were close. Denmark, Holland, they all the same. These Western Europeans are all the same. You're not able to trust them as far as you kicks them. That brought some giggles from the crowd, but Daniel decided not to bother correcting her again. What was the point? It would appear we've got a mystery to solve, gang, Tony said. Who's with me? Gabby rolled her eyes. Who do you think you are, the Scooby-Doo gang? You don't even have a dog. You don't need one when you got the internet, Fabio said. I've heard of these shadow groups like the Illuminati. They're all out to control and manipulate us. I'm with you, Tony. Daniel grinned. Well, I thank you guys, but honestly don't think you're going to find anything other than urban legends. Oh, you don't believe in any of these groups? Ronald said. Well, let me put it this way. If there are all these different groups out to control the world, wouldn't they be spending all their time fighting amongst themselves over who is in charge? All the others laughed, and Tony slapped Daniel on the back. My man, this is the best argument against any of these groups existing I've ever heard, Tony said. But I'm still going to look into this. What did she call it? The Lucky 13, right? Daniel nodded. Yeah, as for me, I'm going to write to the National Science Board and see about getting a full hearing. Ah, good point, Ronald said. I would suggest a two-pronged attack. You pursue the legal, we'll investigate the other possibilities. They all mutually agreed to that plan of action and went their separate ways. Over in Kelly's office, she had dual screens set up for her computer. On one, she had a Hurricane computer model running. On the other, she was searching the internet for information on the Lucky 13 group. A soft throat clearing made her turn toward the door. Kelly, you seem like a woman possessed since you got back, Heidi said. She nodded. That I am, boss lady. I've got a score to settle with a certain general who shall remain brainless. Isn't the term nameless? Not in the case of this moron, Kelly snapped. Well, gee, Kelly, don't mince words. Tell me how you really feel, Heidi said with a grin. Kelly took a deep breath. Sorry if I sound tense, but this person really got under my skin. I see. Well, technically, you shouldn't be working on personal things at work. Huh? What? Oh, the research. Not to worry, milady. I got you covered. My computer is also running the modelling program. Plus, this work could be considered work-related. How do you figure? Well, this group that I'm convinced the General is part of is endangering us by preventing Daniel's hurricane suppression system from being implemented. Uh-huh, Heidi said slowly. Okay, I can buy that for now, but try to keep it to a minimum, okay? Kelly nodded. Sure, thanks. I appreciate you cutting me some slack. Hey, if it's for your boyfriend, why not? Oh, Daniel's not... we're not together. Heidi cocked her head at Kelly. Really? Why not? You two seem made for each other. Ah, I don't know. He's... Okay, it's just... I don't know. Well, that's as clear as mud, Heidi said. I bet I know what it is. Your parents like him. I remember you complaining about that. I wasn't complaining. I was just... Heidi grinned. Yes? Kelly tugged at her hair. Well, it did rub me the wrong way that my mum bought him shirts. She did not, Heidi said, gasping in obvious surprise. She did. Oh, and my dad said, for a non-believer, he was a nice young man. Now come on, what girl can stay with a guy like that? Heidi laughed. I don't know, it sounds to me like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. What's that supposed to mean? You're rejecting a fine fellow merely because your parents do approve of him. Is that fair to him? Heidi asked. Well, that is... Kelly stammered. Never mind. Why did you come in here anyway, dear Abby? Just to mess with my mind? Heidi held out a computer printout to her. No, to show you this. It's the list of names for this year's hurricane season. Oh, thanks, Kelly said, taking the list. She scanned the top of the page quickly. Alex, Betty, Calvin, Danica, Edward, and Finale are the starters. Alex, that's Daniel's father's name. I hope that's not a bad omen. Well, we'll have to wait and see, Heidi replied. I doubt it. The first storm of the season is usually pretty tame. I wouldn't be too sure about that, Kelly said and gestured toward her first computer monitor. I'm running my hurricane model a second time because the results the first time were unsettling. Heidi's brow wrinkled. Whoa, what's up? Well, on the data collected, the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic are unusually warm this year. Plus, there's no El Nino effect. Well, usually that contributes to high-level shearing winds that either prevent storms from forming at all or tear them apart. I see, so you're projecting a busy season, is that it? Not just busy, Kelly replied. I think this year could see the proof of my Category 6 theory. All the conditions are perfect for one to form. Heidi pointed at the monitor. And that's what you expect this second analysis to confirm? Kelly nodded. Yeah, I'm afraid so. If that's the case, Kelly, we'll have to keep the report strictly in-house. You know how the higher-ups still feel about that. Yeah, I know. Funny if I'm right, this season will prove it. Well, while I agree with you, I sincerely hope your theory proves to be wrong, Heidi said. We'll know in a few months.